Okay guys, hey, what I want to talk about today is 10 ways you can lose a listing. And these are kind of quick things, but they're all very, very important. Now, we're going to follow this up with a training on the actual listing presentation, which will be a longer training. But this is kind of the quick way that things you need to know and kind of your checklist to make sure that you don't lose a listing by any of these 10 things. So in no specific order, number one, giving the seller an estimate of value they believe is under market. I think one of the common mistakes agents make is when they go out and they give a market evaluation, they're too dogmatic about it. First of all, it's an opinion of value. And where I think that as agents, many more times we're going to be accurate than the seller is, it's not in our best interest to get too dogmatic about it. I do think we should come with a value. We should give them a range. We should give them some expectations. And if they agree with that, maybe we go into more details on it. But if they don't, I think we need to kind of nudge a little bit over and kind of at least embrace the fact that they can have an opinion of value different than ours, and yet we can still work together. And by the way, I disagree with agents that say you should never ever take a listing that's overpriced. I disagree with that, because anytime you take a listing and it's on the market, I always call it a dog years to a seller. So every day they're in the market is like being on the market a week. And where they might become very, again, kind of fixed in what they think their home is worth, wait for a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, and their estimation value could be more in line with what you have when all of a sudden they find out that their home isn't the hottest thing out there. So that's number one. Number two, commission. And we talk about this a lot in one of the upcoming sessions we're going to have on 25 toughest questions sellers ask us, and we're going to go over this completely. But here's the thing about commission. Again, you don't want to go out there and not get a fair commission. That's crazy. We work too hard for our money. And by the way, your sellers won't respect you. But on the other hand, I don't usually like to talk about commission in too much detail to start with until we get the listing. Then I give them options. The one thing I usually like to leave a seller with at a listing presentation is that I'll work with them on commission, and then I usually get a standard commission in it anyway. Again, talk about that in another training. But I want to kind of move on to number three. Number three is something that few agents do, but we should all do every time we meet with a seller. And that is, we need to tell them how much we want their listing and how much we want to work with them. I know that when I'm out in the marketplace, no matter what I'm buying, I want to be told that whoever's ever selling it to me, that they want to work with me, whether it's a car or a house or whatever it is. So again, don't forget to tell them how much you want their listing. We had a listing presentation years ago in a farm that we were competitive with another agent for a time being until we really sewed up the farm. And we had a presentation for a listing, as did the other agent. And once we came back and I asked the sellers, I always asked them once they selected us, what was the difference? And I thought they'd say you have so much more marketing, you have more results. And I thought they're going to sit there and just go into this, kind of rant of how great we were. That's not what they said. They said both of your presentation was really good. The one thing that separated you is we felt like you and Angie wanted our listing more than they did. So that one thing separated that. So you can bet that every listing presentation I went after that, I made sure they would know how much I wanted that listing. Okay, the next thing is, and I see this happening occasionally with agents that I train, and that is, don't disagree with the sellers on anything. Okay, you don't disagree. You can have differences of opinion, but don't disagree. Tell you a real quick story. Recently had an agent that went out and was telling the seller that it's really good to get a termite inspection before we go on the market. And that's something that we like to do in most cases, but not all cases. But the seller did not want to do that. They were really fixed. And my agent got a little bit more argumentative on it than they should have. If the sellers if they did not want to do a termite inspection, then give them the ideas of why it might work and why it might not work. Give them the options and let them pick. But don't disagree with the sellers on anything. Okay, that doesn't mean you have to agree with them when you don't, but don't disagree. There's a tactful way to do that. So the next thing is something that I see when we actually train our agents on our team when they're new how to do a listing presentation or a buyer's presentation. We actually go through it and we give it to them just as we would a seller or a buyer. Then we have them put their presentation together. We help them with that. and then they come back and we ask them to give us the presentation as if we were the seller or a buyer. And Angie and I are both at that. And a lot of times I see them focusing on either just Angie or just me during the presentation. So what you need to do is you need to make sure that you must connect with all the sellers involved. It may be a situation of a husband and wife. It may be a situation where there's several heirs involved, different investors involved. You must make sure that during that presentation, you connect with each one. One of the advantages that Angie and I had when we got on listing presentations is that I would usually do the bulk of the presentation. She would be kind of the color person. However, if she could see that I was connecting maybe with the man more, then she would make a special point to connect with the wife. And so, again, that was something we do. So make sure that if you've got more than one seller, you connect with both. Okay. The next one is it's amazing how many people go out and do a great listing presentation and they have no follow-up. I always like to leave the listing presentation with our next steps and where we go from here. But a lot of times the sellers are going to say, well, let me think about this. I'm meeting with somebody else. And so what you want to do is make sure that you connect with them. You want to connect with them after you meet with them. Now, if you know that they're not going to make a decision for a couple days, I'd go back and right after the appointment, write a handwritten note. I'd put it in the mail immediately so they get it the next day. However, if you think they might be making a presentation later that day, I would probably text them once I left. And again, reiterate all the important things and thank them for just the idea of inviting you into the home and how much you would like the listing again. Okay. So the next thing is not coming prepared with a great listing presentation. Now this is a big deal. This takes a lot of work. It's a 2-hour presentation we're going to do. We'll split it into 2 1-hour presentations that's coming up. However, the main thing about this is if you don't have a great listing presentation, boy, it's one of the first things you need in this business. You better get one. So if you don't have one now, make sure you come to that training. The next thing is showing up late. It's easy to show up on time. It's one of the easiest things we can do. But I know there have been many agents that have lost listings. I know if I was interviewing a couple people and one showed up late, they would have a big hill to overcome in competing with somebody else who was there on time. In fact, I always say, my family always knew that my saying was early is on time. Now, I don't think it's good to show up early. If you do show up a few minutes early, I would probably wait to walk up, but I'd walk up right on time to the minute. Not 5 minutes early, not 1 minute late, right on the button, okay? Next thing is some agents sometimes fail to dress professionally. Now, this has changed over the years a little bit. If I were talking 15 years ago, I would say as a man, you always need to show up in a shirt and tie. You need to be professional. Today, that might be a little bit different. I would look at your audience, but make sure you do not underdress. If there's a question whether you should dress more or less, then you should dress more. Now, with millennials, sometimes you might be able to be dressed like I am today, depending on your audience. However, if I was presenting to somebody that would be a little bit older, maybe in their 50s or 60s, maybe even late 40s, I'd certainly come dressed up in a shirt and tie as a guy, and appropriate dress for females as well. Again, whatever you do, don't dress unprofessionally. Don't come underdressed. If you have a question mark in there, it's better to overdress than underdress. The last thing I want to talk about, just wrap it up with this, and this is, for me, I'm a man of faith. Don't forget to pray. I prayed before I do my presentations, my trainings. I pray before I do listing presentations and clients as a man of faith. If you're not a person of faith, maybe you want to change this to meditation. But whatever it is, you certainly need to focus before you go into an important meeting. So, hey, hope that helps. 10 ways to lose a listing. I hope these things will help you. And by the way, don't forget, we'll have training coming up shortly on the listing presentation itself. Have a great day.